Hey guys, and welcome to today's painting tutorial. In today's painting session I will be painting the first layer of this portrait, and I'm pretty excited about this one because it is larger than usual and the canvas is also larger than usual. So we will be having enough space for painting in all the details, which is always good for portraits. So the larger you go with a portrait, the more details you can work in, and it won't be that difficult to paint. So the larger, the easier it gets if you have a good reference. So if the reference is super smudgy and a small JPEG, it will be a bit difficult. So, and we're going to start out with the dark areas here. And I'm mixing ultramarine blue, black, ivory black and burnt sienna to get a good shadow color here. So I want to have a transparent shadow color. I believe it just gives me more space to work, as I have where with a very opaque color it's kind of difficult to work into it again with other paints. So, and what I'm doing here is that I first outline the eyes here, the eyelashes. The brush that I use is my usual favorite $1 brush that I get in a set from Action. I use them both for watercolors and for oils. They are super amazing and so cheap. So if you have a dollar store where you live, just check out the brushes. There might be some treasures that you don't know about. So, and I have this black now on my brush, and what I do is that I will look for darker areas and also have this black, so that I don't have to mix the same color over and over again when I want to fill out an area. So her mouth has this black as well. I will mix more of the sienna tone. Actually, I think I don't have sienna on my palette. I have, oh no, it's burnt sienna. Sometimes I also have transparent oxide red, which looks like sienna, but it's just more transparent. So you don't always have to use the same colors as me or as another artist that you maybe want to learn from. I just use the colors that I have at hand. Sometimes one color is empty, or my boyfriend uses it, and then I just look what I have. So you can use different brown tones. I also have a lot of different Naples yellow tones, or also royal blue. It really depends. Sometimes I buy the colors, sometimes my boyfriend, and then we might buy from different brands. And it isn't that like there's a difference between the paint, but it doesn't matter because you have to mix them anyways and have to get the right paint. So as long as they are pigmented and are like the quality that you're used to, for example, if you are used to maybe Academy grade paint, then don't go worse, obviously. So we are using like the fine art, like the medium, not the most expensive, but like the medium tier that you can get. And this is really all I need. So what I did here is that I added a bit of olive green. The paint that I use is from Norma Schminke. It's like medium tier. It's not the most expensive, it's not the cheapest one, and it's a bit of transparent. And I add this olive green because like in every skin tone you find greens. Actually, in the tutorial that I did with the watercolor portrait of the Egyptian goddess, I also used green, because you will use green probably in every face that you're painting if you really have like natural skin tones. So I will now fill out this area here, and I use a bit larger brush, and I'm mixing olive green, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, only a bit of permanent red violet. It's like a dark cherry tone, pinkish tone. I think I will also add a bit of dark ultramarine blue dark or deep. And also Liquin Original, so that I have a transparent paint here that I can work in again. So I'm trying to get the shape right here of the shadow area. The area goes around like the bones of her skull around the eye. So I will try to follow the shadow here. And the shadow color is just a dark brownish muddy color, and I can use it here in her eyebrows as well. I will add a bit of cadmium red light. This is the very intense orange that I use both in watercolors and with oils. And I will just add a bit here in her eyebrows. And also maybe here on her right eye, in the corner of her eye. And the same color can be found here under her nose tip, around her nostril, yeah, and here around her nose tip. I also use the same color to draw in the contours of her chin. There's a bit too much color on my brush and it's a bit too opaque, so I add a tiny bit of Liquin Original. And the Liquin Original, I really like to work with it on canvas, because the canvas structure is, even though it's a fine portrait canvas that I use, it's still rough compared with paper or with board. So the Liquin makes my paint very slick, and then it can flow better on the canvas surface. Whereas if I would use maybe an more oily medium, my paint maybe won't get as slick, and then it would get very easily dry, and I can't draw long lines very good without like the paint getting dried, and I have to add paint all the time to my brush. So here's a shadow under her chin. Yeah, so I still have this orange tone on my brush, and I just look for areas where this orange also appears on my reference. Here as well, between her eyebrows, and here on her ear. It doesn't have to be the exact same color, so I most of the time look for approximately this color, and also like the color values and how saturated it is. So it's quite orangey, and many of these areas here are gray, but you can find a bit of like blush in her ear as well, so I can use it here too. And I can also find it here in the lower region of her neck. So of course I could paint in like the rest of her skin as well, but this would take too long, so I will only focus on her face right now. So I will add the same color here in her lower eyelid, like that, and under her eye, and I think here as well. So sometimes it takes a while until I can find all the areas where this color occurs. Under her shin as well. And now I will mix a darker shadow tone. I add a bit of ultramarine dark here for this area because it's a bit less saturated, and I might fill in this area here. So I could either paint the details here or just fill in the larger areas. It's always a difficult decision. I think I will get the contours first here, and I will use royal blue. I will just mix royal blue into my brownish tone here and add a bit of ultramarine blue to it and a bit of olive green, so that I have a very darkish, very grayish, greenish tone here, unspecific gray tone, and I am adding this to the contours of her face. So I think this color here is, you can find this color a lot in this portrait, like this grayish green tone. So I'm just adding it where I can find it. And the nice thing is, like, the more you find the color, it's like a puzzle, and the portrait comes together. So this is always nice to see. So I can add a lot of this green here around the corners of her eyes. With the small brushes, I don't have to be super careful, so I can just smudge them as I want on the canvas. And this gray is definitely here along the corner of her mouth. So I will add it here, like that. And along her chin line, we can find this gray tone. And actually the gray continues until this area, but it goes lighter. So I will have to mix another tone in order to complete this area. First, I will find more instances where I can add this gray. So I will just use the color to add a contour here. Like my under, the sketch, the under drawing is pretty light. So it is useful to just work along the contours again so that it won't get lost the more paint you add. So I think I can find a lot of this gray here as well. And when I add this gray, I realize that this area, for example, is too light. But this is no problem. We can add dark easily into the translucent areas. But I will continue with that later on. First, I will just continue with filling in the gray areas here. So, like her nose, we have to be a bit careful here because I can easily add too much paint and then it gets smudgy, and then I can't work in any details anymore. So I would have to wait for the oil paint to dry. And obviously I want to get as much as I can done in my first session, so I need a smaller brush for this area. And I will just leave it like that first, for now. So, like that. So, it looks a bit messy. I think I will mix some of the lighter gray tones. And for that I'm using the Royal Blue again. The Royal Blue that I have on my palette right now is very, very light, but it can differ depending on what brand you use. It can be a bit more saturated and bright, or it can be very, very light. And you don't need it. You can just mix ultramarine with white. It's just because it saves a bit of time. I like that. It also gives a nice gray tone. This gray is a bit too light though. I will add more brown to it. Sienna, burnt sienna, black and ultramarine deep. So it should get a bit darker. And also a bit more olive green. Let's see if that helped. Yeah, it's a bit darker. Okay, and now I should use a larger brush. Especially for the larger areas. But maybe I will do like the areas around her nose first. Yes, a bit of this gray as well. And here too. And there aren't a lot of different colors in the portrait right now, but I will add a lot more after I filled out everything. This is just the first rough like map of the colors and of the values. So I added a bit more of the sienna to my brush, and I will add it here around her nose. Okay, and now I'm going to get a larger brush. I want to fill out the area there. Let's see, what can I use? Maybe this one. Okay, for this area here, I will need burnt sienna, light yellow ochre, a bit of the gray that I mixed previously, and a bit olive green, and a bit cadmium red deep. And I will fill out this area here. It might be a bit too bright, too colorful, so I will only use it here for the border. Here as well. I really like when the portrait is a bit bigger. I just have more freedom to paint and I don't have to be super careful with the details. I can make more mistakes and it doesn't really, it's not that obvious. So if you're unsure which size you would like to paint in, it can't hurt to just get a bit larger than you might usually do. It's easier, it's definitely easier. So this area here, it looks a bit more peachy gray, gray and peachy at the same time. So I will use magenta. I just add magenta to the mix, to the brown mix, and a bit of the Royal blue to make it lighter. So, and a bit of the olive green. Let's see if this is the color. So sometimes I don't know myself if I've mixed the right color, and I just have to see it on the canvas. So I think for this area here it's okay. Maybe I can add a bit here in this area too. Maybe a bit here too. And maybe around her blush. It looks like that. But here we need more green. So I will just add more olive green. Olive green, royal blue, more royal blue, and a bit black, so that it's a bit more muted. Let's see if this is the right paint. Yeah, it's almost the same gray mixture. So I will just add this paint here. The color values will be all over the place when everything comes together, and then I will have to work out all the right color values. So this happens. This is normal because the white will always distract me from the right colors, and after I filled out everything, I can then correct and just find out which color values there actually are. So I'm just adding those gray tone here when I think I can do that. Let's see. So, and now, like, this area here is lighter actually, and here we have the blush. So I will mix the blush now, which is a very dark muted red. This won't be very easy. So cadmium red deep, burnt sienna, ultramarine deep, or dark. It really depends which red. This was too much. I will add a bit more of the, I think I will add magenta. Let's see. I mix it too dark, so I have to add a bit more burnt sienna to it. Yeah, it's too dark. I have to start over again. But maybe I can add this dark color somewhere else. Yeah, maybe in the shadow here. A bit in the shadow. Maybe a bit here. Yeah, this was just too dark. So I'm starting over again. Cadmium red deep. A bit of ultramarine. Let's see if this is the color now. Yeah, I think it comes close. I need a bit more liquid because it's too dry. I just carefully try to get the form of the blush right. I don't pay attention to any gradients or blending, so I will do this after I filled out everything. I can do blending, so I don't have to do it right now. So here I will just use olive green and add it to the darker color that I mixed, and a bit of ultramarine dark, and just add it here to the shadow. Bit like that. So I'll use some of the gray that I have left on my palette. Okay, and now I will fill in. I will try to fill in the rest of the colors here on the darker side of her face. And they are peachy, so I will use Naples yellow as a base color. Just Naples yellow and the rest of the paint that I have left on my brush, and it will tone it down a bit and make it darker. I will also add a bit of olive green to it. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. I don't use liquid now, because just a tiny bit, because I want the white of the light areas have to be opaque, because I have to paint in the darker parts here. So unfortunately the Naples yellow is very transparent, so I will just have to add white to it to make it a bit more opaque. I will also add some of the darker red tones that I previously mixed on the palette, and see if I can get this peachy tone here. Well, there's actually a bit more blue and green in it, so at least here on this space. So I will use this color to fill in here her forehead and here in the area above her lip. Like that. And this here is actually too light, so I will have to correct that in an instant. Let's see. I just wipe my brush off, but I don't use Gamsol, like the, how's it called? Like the mineral spirit cleaner. If I use it too often, I will dilute the paint on my canvas and I would mess it up. So I always have to use a relatively dry brush, or a brush where I only have paint on it and not like the mineral spirits that I use. So I can now actually use the darker color that I mixed previously, just make it a bit darker. And I need more sienna and more of the olive green, because here we have a shadow. It goes here along her mouth. Every face has this shadow that goes exactly these lines here. On some portraits it's more visible, and on some portraits it's less visible. After a time you will recognize the some of the forms that every face has, like some of the features that can be found in every portrait, and it helps when you want to paint. It will just make things a bit easier for you if you know like those little features. It looks very messy right now, but since it's oils, I don't mind. I can just paint over it whenever I want. So now this area here needs to be filled. I will use my Naples yellow and some of the gray that I already mixed on the palette. And let's see if it's opaque enough. I will just fill in this area here. And a bit more of the royal blue or the king's blue for the area here, the little shadow that is on the left side of her nose. So I will add some of the gray here because the blush is too much on the right side, so it's actually not that large. Using a bit of the blue here, like that. Okay, it looks super messy right now. It might be a bit too distractive for me, so Let me see if it helps when I blend it a bit. So I will use this as a blending brush, just a soft brush, soft and not too stiff, and I will just go over it a bit and wipe it off, just that it's not that messy and chaotic. And just go over the areas that I want to blend. I also try to follow the form a bit so that I don't mix paint together that shouldn't be together. Like the shadow, for example, here goes very clean in this direction. I obviously don't want to blend it together with her eye, for example. Okay, this looks a bit better. It's also useful to do that because it takes off a bit of the paint and it will be a bit easier to paint in it again with more paint. So it looks better already. Not perfect, but better. So I will save. I don't want to overdo it right now because I have to add a lot more paint to it. And I will continue with this part here. So ultramarine blue and Naples yellow and a bit of the peachy tones that I previously mixed. The more paint you have on your palette, the easier it will get to mix, because you can use some of the paint you already mixed and mix it together with the other paint. You don't have to mix every single color again. So this is nice, having a full palette. And also don't mix too less color or too less paint. Can't hurt to mix a bit more. You never know, you might need it later on. Okay, I need to do the eyebrow actually. I always forget them. This area has to be a bit lighter, and since the Naples yellow is not that opaque, I will just use white. White with a bit gray. Some of the paint that I mixed on my palette, just together with white, it's gray and it's a good skin tone. Just adding it here. And here as well. And the gray also can be found here in her chin. Let's see, is that all the gray? Maybe here too? Maybe a bit. And definitely here around her nose. Like that. Okie dokie. And now maybe this area here needs to be a bit darker, so I will just use some of the burnt sienna gray mix from my palette and just fill it in. Maybe I need more of the ultramarine here. Yeah, that looks better. I always paint a bit faster with oils because it just takes so long. Like, adding all the different colors really can take a long time, and maybe this is what because I want to kind of get it done faster, I try to work a bit faster because I know what paint I have to mix, and also I can't really mess things up. Whereas with watercolor, I have to be super concentrated and focused because everything that I do is kind of permanent. I can't really correct it. And with oils I can work fast, and then in the end I can still correct my mistakes. So if this is a bit too fast, or you think, how can I do it that fast? If you're maybe slower, then don't worry about it. It's not bad if you need longer for it. Just my annoying thing that I do. So don't worry about it. So for the eyebrows, I use ultramarine dark, a bit of the permanent red violet, and ivory black. And then I try to, first I need to get the shape, roughly the shape right here from her eyebrows. And the black, it's a bit annoying because it mixes here with the gray. So I will definitely have to work on the border of this eyebrow. And this is why normally I should have done it first, because you can easily paint with light tones into dark tones. This is no problem, but the other way around, like painting dark tones into light tones, it will mix with the lighter tone, with the whites, and then it automatically gets lighter too, even though if you want to have a very dark tone. So always start with the dark tones. It's easier. But it really depends on your process. It really depends. If you have a completely different technique, then don't listen to me. It's different for everyone. But for my technique, like the Alla Prima technique, wet and wet, it's definitely easier to paint, to start with the dark tones. So the eyebrow area is always a bit different, at least difficult, at least for me. I always have some issues with eyebrows. I also just realized that this whole area needs to be a bit darker. And there's already a bit too much paint in this area. So what I will do, I will try to lift off some of the paint here. I will use the smaller brush here and make it completely clean. Try to make it as dry as possible. And then I go over the border here and lift a bit of the paint off. Also, the eyebrow is a bit more orange. I painted it a bit too grayish, so I will use burnt sienna because burnt sienna is pretty orange in my opinion, and I will add some of the burnt sienna tone here on top of the eyebrow. So, and the same on the right side. And now I will make this area here a bit darker because that bothers me right now. It has to be dark. So I will use some of the brown orange tones on my palette, and I will add a bit more ultramarine dark to it. A bit more ultramarine dark. And just make this area here darker because it was actually too light. I can use the same tone here as well, and in the corner of her eye too. It might be still too light. I can only see that when I filled out the complete portrait and maybe even the complete painting, so that I can compare it better to my reference. I want to fill in this area here. Just a gray tone that is slightly lighter than the dark tone that I used for her lashes. And then I just use pure black and ultramarine blue. And I will add this here because it's still too light. Oftentimes I begin with the eyes, but yeah, it's different every time. This time I wanted to fill in the major parts first and just cover as much areas as I could. And sometimes I just want to get the eyes right, or if I want to show you something specific, I do that. So I need a bit olive green for the eyebrows. So there's already like a lot of paint on the canvas. I might have to correct this later on and just lift off a bit of the paint again. I use a bit burnt sienna here. And a bit olive green and ultramarine deep. And I like to work here this little area out. So here we actually have a dark shadow right under her eye. And here, like the border here of this shadow is orange. So I will use cadmium red light and burnt sienna, mix the two together, and with some of the gray that I have on my palette, I just mix on top of everything so that all the paint that I mix get automatically muted a bit, because obviously I don't want to have super bright oranges here on this face. Instead, I would like to have every paint very muted and very natural, like the skin tones. So I just mix on top of everything. This prevents like the colors getting too bright. So just a bit more sienna and ivory black for some of the eyebrow hairs. So much paint here already, I can't add more. I need to see what I will do about it. So on the right side, we have another eyebrow too. I will first try to fill in this area here. I might do the eyes at last. I don't know why. I think I just want to fill in the larger areas here first. It's also like the larger portrait, and I feel it. I sometimes have the feeling it will take forever if I concentrate first on the small details. So yeah, this could be a reason. So a little bit of this gray skin tone for her nose here, for the corner of the right eye. And here actually we have blues, so I will use ultramarine dark, and a bit what is it, cadmium red light, a bit of ultramarine dark, and make here like a brownish blue shadow, like that. Now I went over the dark area here, and I have to make it dark again. As you can see, I don't pay much attention to details and to blendings. I will do it when I finished everything, then I can blend. First I have to get the colors and the values right. So on to the lighter areas of her face. And I will start with obviously not the lightest areas, so I will start with a mid-tone. And I mix a bit of light ochre and Naples yellow together with magenta and a bit of white. So now we have like mid-tone, maybe a bit of the olive green and also a bit of liquid because I don't want super thick paint. Let's see, I think this might be a bit too yellowish though. So I will add more olive green to it. More olive green. Maybe a bit more magenta. Yeah, maybe that's better. Maybe a bit blue to make it more greenish. So I'll just look where I can find this particular color, as I did with the left side of her face. So it's the same technique, just observe the reference photo and look where you can find that paint. So the brush actually was a bit too large for the details, so I will use a smaller one here, especially here for the contours of her nose. I don't want to mess that up. More liquid. That. This was a bit too much liquid. Then it gets too transparent and I can't paint into my other paint that is on the canvas. So I add a bit more sienna and ochre to this tone to make it more orange, because we have some areas that are more orangey here. So I will just continue with these areas. And it's a bit more orangey between her eyes and here around the right, her right eye. Now I want to mix a tone that is a bit more fleshy for her nose, and I will just use the same tone that I mixed. I add more Naples yellow, a bit of magenta to it so that it gets more pinkish, and I add white to it, so it will be a yellow, pinkish, grayish white. It will always be grayish because it's here on the muddy palette, but this is exactly what I want. So sometimes muddiness is good on the palette. When I add white, I also add liquid so that it gets a bit more smooth, a bit more fluid. So and then I will carefully carve out like the shapes of her nose. This is a bit too light actually, so like the complete left side of her nose is way darker, but I will use this paint that I have on my brush for other areas here where I can find this color. I don't want to waste it obviously, so I'll just see where I can find this paint or this this color. Here on the right side of her face. Like that. So this is a peachy variant of a flesh tone, but on the right side of her face there are also areas that are more grayish and more ochre, so I don't want to fill in like every area with a small peachy tone, because it would make it look very flat if I would only use one color for her skin. So here actually it's very peachy because we have the blush there, but I will add that. I will just add a bit of the cadmium red deep to the flesh tone that I mixed and just gently add that to the paint. Okay, now I want to fill it. I want to mix like a grayish ochre tone for the rest of the lighter areas. I also think this brush is a bit better because it's a bit larger, but I have to use a newer one. Like when they are used already, they spread out and they get stiff. So I will use Naples Yellow. Naples Yellow I used a lot today, so it's already empty on my palette. I will just use Naples Yellow and add it to the peachy tone. Let's see if this already did the job. And it's a bit too dark and too saturated, so I will have to add more of the King's Blue and a bit white and a bit liquid. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's the color. That's the right color here. For all the little corrections that I will have to add, definitely after I filled out the face, because there will be corrections, like I don't want to leave like this area, for example, like that. I will put in a time lapse because I can't really explain it. I just look at my reference, and I will also go back and forth from my canvas and look at my reference from a distance. And yeah, but I think you can definitely understand it. So when you do the same process, you will probably find out at the end that you have to add a lot of little details and things that you kind of noticed. So yeah, I hope that's okay. So I just add this gray here. Here this area is lighter. I kind of painted over it, so I will have to add some whites there as well. Just fill out here this little space under her nose. And here as well. Okay, and now I will add some of the whites. So actually, oh, what happened? Actually, the whites here aren't white at all. They are very, very light yellow. I don't want to use the Naples Yellow because it's not opaque enough. So I will just use pure white, and a bit of my cadmium yellow lemon. How is it called in English? Yeah, cadmium yellow lemon, just a tiny bit, so that I have a yellowish white tone. And let's see, there's already a lot of paint on the canvas, so it will be mixed. It will get mixed here, but I can still carefully add another layer of paint here. And this area here needs to be light as well, directly under her eye. There are so many birds outside, it's beautiful. Like I'm painting right now in the studio and I have some bird like a feeding place directly. I built a feeding place directly in front of the window, and the little birds come and visit me, and they're mainly blue tits, so they're so cute. It's really lovely in the summer. I can just watch birds all the time, which is very distractive from painting actually, because when I don't want to paint, I just watch the birds and look at the garden and the beautiful flowers. So, and yeah, I added some of the lighter tones here, and I already have the feeling the portrait comes together. It's not super segmented everything. I will add some of the white here underneath her lip, on the top of her chin, like that. Then I need to clean the brush because I want to blend this little white spot here into the paint. Okay, I will leave the blending parts, the blending process for later. Yeah, before I do the lips, before I do the lips and the eyes, I will have to fill in the remaining spots here. And here we have like a little V, the shape of a, is it V or is it U? No, it's the shape of a V on top of her lip. And here is a little shadow as well. And then I need a darker skin tone here for the left side of her lip, like that. And now I want to fill in the nose. So I will use this brush here, and I will use some of the darker tones that I already have on my palette for the shadow here under her nose tip. So now when I paint little details like noses, eyes, lips, I obviously have to concentrate and focus more and use smaller brushes and less paint. This is important because you don't have as much like wiggle room when painting those details. You can easily use too much paint and then the canvas won't take more paint on, and everything will just get smudged and you can't do any changes anymore. So you have to be more careful when you do details. Of course, you can just wait until the paint is dried and go over it as much as you want, but you will probably be impatient like me and want to get done as much as possible in the time you have for painting. So yes, just this. It's a bit darker here under her nose tip. Now on the side over her nostrils, I have to use a light gray tone, a bluish greenish gray tone. Every paint, every skin color is a variant of something bluish and grayish and brownish. It's always the same, some variant of this. So I will just carefully fill out this form here. Here I add a bit more red to the nose tip. I'm just working it in a bit, blending it here into the top of the nose. Whoa! I easily destroy things. I'm a very clumsy person, so I break things easily. So here for the lower part of her nose, I just use a gray tone, and here in the corner around her nostril it's a bit darker, so just adding some darker tones here. Her nostril needs to be darker too. I just add black and transparent oxide red here. It can't hurt to make the nostril, like, add a bit of some red tones to it, because there are blood vessels in the skin and they are always red, so you can't go wrong with adding reds to shadows that are on or in the skin. So under her nostril I'll just add some brown. Yeah, so this area here needs to be filled. I just use some gray variant that I have left on my palette and just fill out the space here. I now need more magenta and cadmium red light, and some lighter tones for like the border here. So this was not light enough. I just add more white to the tone. So right now I almost don't need to add new paint to my palette. I can just use what's on it. I've mixed so much paint on it already. Except for white, I will probably always add white to my palette right now, because I'm building up from the dark tones, as you've probably already noticed, from the dark tones to the very light tones in the end. So for the nose tip, just try to fill in here just the remaining part. Almost done. So, and now it's obviously very messy still, everything. Here actually needs to be darker. So I'm using some of the darker tones on my palette and just a little bit of blue as well. Just make this area here darker. Like that. Now the area here between her eyes, I don't like that. So I will just add some. The birds are twittering outside. It's super cute. I will add some of the light ochre and sienna mix here between her eyebrows. Like that. And here is an area left. I need some mix with light ochre and what is it? Cadmium red light. And obviously white. Okay. Now the nose still looks weird. Everything still looks weird, so I will use some of my light yellow tone here for the shape of her nose. I also have to add all the shadows yet, so yeah, I will do that. I will do this later. Okay, and now I think I will continue with the lips. For that I will be using Cadmium Red Deep, Burnt Sienna, and black, Ivory Black. And I'm starting here with the dark corner of the lip. this is not dark enough, so I need to add more black to it. So it has to be very deep red, so maybe I use transparent oxide red, maybe that will help, because otherwise it just looks like a dark brown. Yeah, I think it now looks a bit better. Here as well. And now I will mix a lighter tone, so I will just add cadmium red light and transparent red oxide. I always mix up the color names here. Transparent oxide red, I think it's the English name. The color names are complicated, so forgive me. It's basically a dark pink. Just fill out here this lip area. So like this. So here's actually a light stripe under her lip, but since I have red on my brush, I will correct this later. So now I need pure cadmium red deep for the really wet parts of her lip. Like it's really a bright red, really strong bright red. I can pretty much use the pure color here without mixing it. I will have to definitely work it in here, in her skin, because otherwise it just looks pasted, and obviously we don't want that. But first I need to go over the shadow area here again, because I added too much of the strong red tone here. For the dark area here between her lips, like her mouth, this needs to be darker. And here as well. Just there's already a lot of paint on the canvas, so everything looks a bit smudgy, a bit not so nice. But that's no problem. I will correct parts of it later on, and some parts I will just let them as they are and correct them in the second layer. Just make everything more smooth and more beautiful, not so messy. Also the borders are fuzzy and not so nice. Okay, what we can do to kind of blend in the lips a bit is using a small brush here, making it very as dry as possible, and I will just go around the lip. And work it a bit into the skin tone in the surrounding area, so that it doesn't look that pasted and bit more natural. You can do this technique with every border. Just use a dry brush and go over some parts of your painting and it will smooth it out. I can see the white canvas through this area. I don't want that. Okay, now let's move on to the eyes. I need a small brush for that. Do I have a small brush? No, I don't. The quest for the small brush is always the same. Okay, I will use a slightly larger brush. I think it's still okay because the size of the portrait is a bit larger, so I hope it works. For the contour of her iris, I use ultramarine dark and a bit of the transparent oxide red. Also green, it doesn't really matter. I just want to have a dark border, but not black. Also on her right side. Like that. And the pupil in the middle. So I might just correct here some areas that needs to be darker. Okay, and now I will add the white of the eye. On the left side, it is a almost brownish skin tone. So I will just use the paint that I have on my brush and go into an area on my palette where I have like a light skin tone. Then I add a bit liquid to it. And yeah, let's see if this is the right paint here. Could be, so I will just fill it out and see if it works. Maybe I add a bit more of Naples yellow to it. Like this. Okay, so it looks super weird because I haven't filled out her eye yet, so I will do that. She has those, or I gave her those very beautiful turquoise greenish eyes because I really like this color for eyes. So let's fill this in. So if you have white as a ground for your paint, the advantage is that when you add some very colorful colors paint to it, the brightness will be preserved. Like you can add very bright, you can paint very bright, but sometimes when you have, for example, already used a color for your paint, for your painting in advance, like primed it with a color, then sometimes you don't get as bright paint because there are colors, for example purple, that are so transparent that you can't really see them unless you have a white background, so that you can add like a white purple layer to it, almost like watercolors. And this turquoise isn't very opaque. I fill out the bluish color of her eye, and I also try to correct the form a bit. The paint is very diluted on the canvas, so I added a bit too much of Gemso or just in general too much paint, so it looks all a bit wonky and messy. And also, as you might have already noticed, that eyes look very flat yet, so I need to add colors on the eyeballs. And here in the corner needs to be darker, this corner as well, just more dark red tones. It's difficult to add dark on the canvas, there's too much paint on it, so at the end it gets really annoying because you can't add more paint to the canvas. So please stick stick to the canvas. So the irises here have a shadow on them, so I will use just ultramarine dark and permanent oxide red and add here on top of the iris a shadow. So that is a bit better. I just use the paint on my brush, add a shadow here, and also correct the form here a bit. I also need to squint my eyes because it still looks very flat, also here on the right side. So I'll just first correct the form a bit, then I need a gray tone here, and I add a shadow here to her on her right eye, inside the white of her eye. That's a shadow. Here as well is a little shadow, just here. So the lash line on the right needs to be a bit more at the bottom. So like that. And now I need to add the waterline with a darker skin tone here. So it is along her eye here, like that. And on the right side, obviously too. Okay, here, this area is, I accidentally left it open, so I have to fill it in with paint. There's some terrible music outside. I don't know why, but most of the people where I live have no taste whatsoever with music. Like, it's the same like country music in English, like we have this in German too. It's horrible. I really can't stand it. So I hope you don't hear it. I unfortunately have to endure this music. So yeah, I need to add a bit of the contour to her iris again. So we fill in the complete portrait. It doesn't look amazing. It's just filled in with paint. And what I will do now is I just go over everything again and smooth it out, correct the wonkiness that you can see everywhere. But filling out everything already took, I don't know, at least an hour probably. So just correcting everything will probably take me another hour. and I will do it in a time lapse. They're just small changes, so I will probably first smooth the entire thing out, then I go over the eyes again, and definitely make some areas darker, like the nostril, for example, is not dark enough. Yeah, I might even fill out the remaining parts of his skin tone. It depends on how much time I have today. Yeah, and yeah, I will leave this correcting part as a time lapse for you. I hope this was helpful for you, the first parts, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see in future tutorials, and I enjoyed to have you here today, and I thank you for watching. So I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye!